Hey everybody, this is Rido and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Although I guess with a 30-second delay now, live stream is a subjective term in the sense that the footage is going out live, but it is on a delay. But in all fairness, I guess that is pretty much how all live presentations these days go, for one reason or another. Uh, It's the day after American Thanksgiving, so for the accountability section, I'm gonna say I am not concerned one bit on the fact that I didn't accomplish anything video game wise this yesterday. I didn't even think for a second that I was gonna play any games. I will say a story about my uncle is pretty much not a great game because it's just very repetitive in its one gameplay mechanic, and it's hard to keep up focus there and want to play when I keep on doing the same thing that I have been doing since the beginning. Um, but yeah, I've been obsessively working on my server, and of course, for a brief moment there, celebrating American Thanksgiving for as much as there is really to celebrate in Thanksgiving ever. Any Thanksgiving's really not. It's really this like forced day always to tell people who may not feel like being thankful that they have to be thankful. Which I mean, this is just weird social pressure to be something that you're not. Whereas I would argue it's probably better for human beings to embrace what they are, and or if there's some part of themselves they don't like, work on replacing that in their own time or fixing whatever they don't like. Let's see, what are we? Shadowcraft and Havencraft. We've got an arena run. Uh, we're into another uh, World Cup thing, which these certainly change fairly quickly as far as what's going on. Still not spending any real money here, but I will buy a pack here. I don't know if I can really afford to buy packs of this expansion and the old expansion every day, but whatever. Uh, so last I had said on my server, I had installed Air Sonic, a subsonic spin-off fork of uh, of a software, the web server that holds your music and movies and photos in theory, and how it had a DLNA server. Well, inherently, the Dish Hopper's home media player program is just programmed so incredibly badly that it just does not support AirSonic. Which the good news is I am in the process of eliminating Dish Hoppers and Joeys from being part of the way in which you could stream to each of the TVs in my houses. I have too many TVs, and I just ideally would want to get that to work. Uh, but I wanted to see if I could get it to work, so that sent me down many different paths, and throughout those many different paths, I installed or tried to install many uh, different options. There's really one option and several others that just don't work, and that is Mini DLNA, which is at some point was changed. It changed its name to Ready Media, but that name seems to not really have stuck because there was just so many tutorials and so many people looking for help as to how to get Mini DLNA to work. Uh, and so I could not install that in a sandbox on Docker. It just wasn't going to work anyways. For the most part, it's just a little convoluted to try and have a broadcasting device on using UDP instead of TCP packets, which there's no traffic control in UDP packets, so it's just being shouted out into the void. The internet information is Shadowcraft or Havencraft. So, yeah, I installed that. I found a interesting project called MP3 file system, or MPEG file system, that automatically just takes a folder and auto transcodes all the like FLAC or modern like free lossless audio files and converts them down to a lower resolution, lower quality MP3 file. And so instead of having to have a transcoder built in, the file system itself just does it automatically on demand, which is really cool. Now there's a fork of MP3 file system that then tries to do the same thing with video, and I could not get it to install on CentOS, which again, this is just another example of that almost certainly was a project that is being developed for Debian-based Linuxes, and if I was on a Debian-based Linux, it probably would have been a lot easier to install that. Although it is kind of questionable whether the transcoding in live could ever be fast enough to take a video and transcode it down to a lower video, because that's a lot of processing power. I've never seen like transcoding of videos or DVD ripping that happened anywhere close to real time, or even anywhere close enough that you could build up a small buffer. I wouldn't be surprised if it's pretty poor quality video. But I had tried to install that, and that's been took a lot more of my time and ended up in a failure. CentOS is really weird. You get the security enhanced Linux, you get this theoretical increased security, but then I think like the anti-brute force program that I installed like day one failed to ban. I installed it. Apparently I didn't enable it. I would have thought on at least Debian that it would have enabled itself by default when you install it. Certainly some of those programs, security programs like that, should probably enable themselves by default, if not completely shut down and lock down everything by default and say, hey, you've got to go configure this right now or we will not, we will just block everything. But apparently it didn't, because and then like CentOS's logs only mail every week by default. Like they only rotate the logs every week, and that means when I set it up to mail the logs, I'm getting these giant logs that are then unencryptable because it's too big. So the end-to-end encryption mailing function I had built and installed and done was that little script. That wasn't working either, just because of that issue. Although I think that will be fixed, hopefully going forward. But yeah, I really would have to question a lot of things about CentOS. It doesn't seem like it's actually a relatively up-to-date software compared to Debian either. Linux certainly can be a mess. I installed like a Wi-Fi dongle in it, and just like straight up the Wi-Fi dongle won't work. And then I installed 2 other Wi-Fi dongles and they wouldn't work either. So that's my entire collection of Wi-Fi dongles. Because that would have been the easiest way to have two DLNA servers running is to simply have two different network connections on the same computer, and then I could have one go to the Wi-Fi, the lower quality DLNA server of mini DLNA, and then I could have had the higher quality stay on the main connecting port. But I couldn't get a single one of the Wi-Fi dongles to work, and I think that's probably in part the reason why I have like 3 Wi-Fi dongles. It kind of doesn't make sense for me to have even one. But yeah, in a weird way, Wi-Fi dongles can be particularly non-standard forming because a lot of them also have these like, well, it was labeled on Linux as a CD-ROM mode, but basically they have USB memory in them, and you plug it in, and then it gives you the drivers via the USB memory instead of being just universal plug and play compatible. And yeah, some of that would have probably been problems even on Debian Linux, but I really feel like CentOS is a great decision if you only want to install a couple of things on a server. But once you start getting into to really trying to get out of the normal things too, it's got to be something that is done on a day-to-day process. I imagine of all the open to vulnerability WordPress servers out there, I imagine a higher than normal percentage of WordPress servers out there are running WordPress on CentOS, and that probably that has a lot. WordPress's vulnerabilities are its own, certainly, but that would be what I would expect CentOS to be used for, is that you're just going to set up a not particularly complicated website. You're not going to run Amazon.com off of CentOS. Although, arguably, as I understand it, you kind of do run Amazon.com off of a lot of different copies of the exact same PCs. So they could be images that are getting launched over and over again on virtual machines. And that's one of the things that's kind of easy to not grasp, is that when you are going to Amazon.com, nobody is actually going to the same Amazon.com. They're going to clones of it. There's probably a top tier server that in major cities, and those top tier servers keep the master production files, and then those master production files of how the website's supposed to look then copy themselves over to a bunch of other local servers. Which, that's kind of how the internet in general works, but also, as I've been doing a lot of work with setting up servers using Docker, there's a major problem with Docker in the fact that there has been a blind spot in my mind, but I also feel like there's a very good case here that Docker only works because there's a decent community supporting Docker. And the second the support and the websites and the results on Google as to how do you actually get this to work, or this specific Docker container to work, once those results are outdated or eliminated, I don't know if there's a standard instructions. Like, I didn't install Docker and didn't get linked to any kind of documentation website of theirs that was great. Like they do have some documentation. Obviously, you wouldn't get a project successful at all if it was just entirely cryptic. But it really is far, far too cryptic. And it's only because there's just this absolute need and passion that 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 Docker is even used at all, in my opinion. I feel like you would definitely just straight up ignore it and not use it if you were left to your own devices. Okay. And so, yeah, as for the accountability section, which I've been going on for like 16 minutes now, the network seems a little bit better today. So maybe I finally did adjust some things. Maybe I'm just lucky, because right now is Black Friday and people would be shopping. I'm pretty much already done with my Black Friday shopping, unless there's a major sale. Lego had 20% off of a bunch of small decorative things: plants, street lights, stop signs, street signs, things like that. This whole accessories concept that they had done last year, but they never seemed to really bring it to the storefronts. I think they're pretty much just abandoning it at this point. The accessories idea kind of makes sense, but what it sort of is the bundling of several smaller items that, if you're doing a giant Lego city, you would really like. Like trees, you can really never get enough trees. There's never going to be a set that they release where it's just a giant forest and there's potentially 100 Lego tree pieces. And even if there was, those Lego tree pieces would be probably very, very similar. So that idea is great, but then to get the trees, you also are paying a little bit of a premium to get things that you almost certainly are going to have extras of, like flowers. Like, sure, there's a decent number of flowers you could also have if you're trying to just landscape a giant Lego city, but generally speaking, you end up with at least one, if not two, extra petals from a 3-petal flower every time there's a flower in the set, which means you have this growing collection of extra elements. But yeah, I literally bought like 10 of the same set 2 or 3 times, and just because it was slightly on discount, and it was only 20% off. Amazon.com is also selling a $16 controller that you would hook up to an existing garage door. This is tied into their idea that they're going to convince people to let them potentially have access to opening your garage door and putting packages in your garage, which sadly I think a lot of people are taking Amazon on that offer. It's smarter than opening the front door, which is what they'd already offered. But ignoring that, if you wanted a way to potentially use your phone to open a garage door and close a garage door, that $16 is a reasonable idea. certainly. Of course, a lot of people, myself included, have broken garage door openers, and so that whole part would have to be upgraded, and that's where you get to the $200 or $300 price that you would probably spend. And yeah, probably if you're getting a decent garage door in the next few years, there really is a decent argument to be made that the that kind of technology should be built in, or perhaps there should be kind of a standardized tech company that makes all of the garage door controllers, and they do the computer programming and keep it all tight and secure. Yeah, garage door remotes aren't secure by any means. And
Is that a human?
and the same could be said for a lot of the car keys. That's another level of technology that needs to be improved upon. But so far, that's all I've even seen as far as anything really worth mentioning. I don't suspect that there will be too many Black Friday sales worth even mentioning over the weekend, or even on Monday, Cyber Monday, and all of that. I think people are just broke on both sides. The companies are broke and they can't afford to really put anything on discount. And Black Friday, I'm not sure, has been a good deal in 15 years. Really. And
I told you to leave.
even if somebody at this moment did have a decent amount of money to blow on extra purchases, they probably should they probably should very quickly learn to save their money and move and be cautious, because you just never know right now. Like that we could be just at the tip of the iceberg of a long running depression.
Why did it have to be a clear day?
Right. Well, as is true every stream, I do not want to stream forever. So I think we will just do I want to kill that guy?
The world cycles on.
Yeah, I don't want to stream forever. So let's just cover the news. Some bad news that I've lost all my progress on time clickers. I probably could go look up a backup and get the save files, but apparently I never synchronized my data on time clickers, and when I installed my new computers, it doesn't use like Steam backup to synchronize the progress. I could waste time trying to recover that, but in all honesty, this is a blessing in disguise, because I can I can particularly stop having it run in the background, which I haven't really had it run in the background much of 2020 at all anyways. But I did continue my running gag of nominating it. There's literally only one category in which it could have been nominated in, though, so it did create a unique situation where the only thing I could really do was shuffle some things around to make something work.
Human?
The real battle
I'm done sticking my head in the clouds.
So the first game we have on Steam here is Poop on 2020 Simulator, and while I imagine many people would agree with this concept, this is just a low effort joke troll game for $1.99 English only. And if on it, if Steam is showing you anything today, it's showing you that 2020 is totally willing to sell you literal virtual poop for $1.99, and some people will buy it.
Hellstorm rages. Oh, why'd it have to be a clear day?
See. Select the name, put a copy in your hand.
Sugar's the best cure for the blues, you know.
What else do we want to do?
While you can.
Time to tidy things up.
Amidst the hellstorm.
So here's the Steam Awards. We talked about it. So Game of the Year award. I've made my nominations. I think Hades is going to win the Game of the Year award. A lot of my nominations are things that I think will win. A lot of these games also did come out either in 2019 or 2020. Steam is trying to crack down on people nominating really old games. VR Game of the Year award, I think Half-Life Alyx is a shoo-in for that. So here we have the Labor of Love award, and I nominated that as a joke. Better with Friends award, Fall Guys certainly is a good article. I wanted to represent the anime game somehow, so for Outstanding Visual Style, I put Katakawa Jet Girls, which is the Mario Kart game with anime girls that are shooting water guns or like laser guns, and they lose clothing. So there's one person on the back of a jet ski shooting, and there's one on the front of a jet ski driving, and that's how you get your like Mario Kart, whichever Mario Kart it was that had the
Now don't push.
See. See.
I could get used to this whole faith thing.
So yeah, I haven't actually played any of these games with the exception of Time Clickers. Most innovative gameplay, I chose Subliminal. I don't think it was particularly well received, but it is pretty innovative, and I don't feel like it just got wrecked. Minus 12 damage. That he just played some kind of combo. I was not paying attention, but he played some kind of combo that wrecked me. Oh well. We're probably going to go 5-0 or 0-5. Subliminal, I think, is probably a good pick there. Best game you suck at, Command & Conquer Remastered Collection deserves some shout out. Also, I think kind of everybody sucks at it. I chose Sayonara Wild Hearts for Best Soundtrack Award, which I think that's a pretty good bet. Outstanding Story-Rich Game, I have Black Mesa Definitive Edition. And then Sit Back and Relax. This is definitely what I would have put Time Clickers into, but I couldn't, so I swapped it around for Microsoft Flight Simulator, which also Microsoft Flight Simulator deserves its own accolades for. It did solve certainly an issue as far as do I need to own the older versions of Microsoft Flight Simulator, and it's pretty obvious no I don't at this point. But as far as the actual sale goes, like, you just nominate the 4 things, play a game you nominated, nominate a game in each category, nominate at least one game, and then review or update review, and that's the only reason why I'm updating the same review over and over again. And that gives you a top tier task icon that gives you some experience to level up your character, and that's pretty much it. Like, if you did purchases for the fall sale, which I did do some purchases, a small amount, frankly, a lot of like really close to $1 games or what I picked up for the autumn sale. I will also say that we're here at the end of November, and I blinked and slept through all of November pretty much. Like, I am shocked by even my standards that I've pretty much not accomplished anything or not even recognized the passage of time for this November. Inherently, that probably means I also need to schedule. I'm desperately behind on uploading and scheduling. Let's see. What does this do?
Back straight,
Let's do
eyes
this. Oh, I cannot kill that character. Darn it.
Is that a human?
A bear a day keeps the doctor away.
As for the autumn sale, as far as what I got, not really a lot to talk about there.
Get ready for war.
It gave you some points for the Steam store that are the like non-sellable item versions of items that you would have gotten for just playing a game before. There really wasn't a lot of things I saw that I just felt like I absolutely needed. You get into scenarios where you have Atelier Ryza for 30% off, and that's a decent deal, but not really enough. I didn't buy Tabletop Simulator. I got 2 or 3 maybe big games and then a bunch of small games, and just trying to do some catch up. Didn't realize Among Us here is only $3.99, but I don't know how I'd play that. I guess Black Mesa. There was a decent number of $9 games, but even at that, the price went up really high, and then it was like at $250. I'm like, how can it be at $250 when I really don't have anything at all in the shopping cart that I care about that much? And so I started losing some stuff. There's like Lego games. I still have some Lego games in the hopper, as it were, so there's no real reason why I would need to buy more Lego games. Also, we've hit the point where there are no more Lego games that are just $9.99. They are $9.99 for the base game, and then there's a bunch of DLC that might bump it back up to like $40. There was a 4 or 5 year middle point there. They've potentially stopped doing that now, but they haven't gone back and adjusted any of the prices either. Let's see.
You were done for.
Where is your plumage. Don't give up.
Darn it. But yeah. I didn't get any like major adult games because those are still pretty much impossible to even think about playing. Slay the Spire was $12.49, and that was one that I could have gotten certainly. But yeah, I'm definitely trying to save up. I'm over budget. Buying expensive bookcases, bookshelves, certainly eats into a budget. Building a new computer this year eats into the budget. And you just never know what's forward. It's now definitely feels like a time to act as conservatively with finances as you possibly could.
The real battle begins. Eating makes me hungry. My tummy's rumbling.
Stand down.
There we go.
My crew stands with me. Hold up your swords with pride.
So let's start going through the games, and then let's just wrap up this stream.
If I fall, the people will be lost. I'm here, just like
Let's see. Here we have a game called Sunlight Sleeper, which seems like it's an asset flip horror game. Let's see. $10.99. Bunch of garbage URLs. English only. Yep. This might be the first instance of us seeing any character with a mask on. That might start to be the standard depiction. But at the moment, I imagine that that's mostly just because it's a troll game. Using masks in low-effort games and troll games is also an easy way to not have to animate mouth movement. TechRaptor has an article here. Baldur's Gate 3 Update 3 will break your save game,
like I said in my
but you can keep playing the old version. So you have to play on patch 2. Okay. Well, that's interesting, I suppose. It seems like you could adjust for that, but maybe they want people to go back and play the game a second time. If I could just survive one turn.
There's no voice as divine as mine.
But I'm not gonna win one turn. Apparently Serious Sam games are up to 90% off, which not all the Serious Sam games are great, but yeah, if you're interested in them, if you have any nostalgia for them, now would probably be as good of time to get them as ever. Serious Sam is very possibly going to disappear in the back of behind the fact that Crow Team was just acquired by the Embracer Group, the parent company of THQ Nordic. So I wouldn't be surprised if some remakes might be in the works, or we never see another Serious Sam game at all. One or the other could be the case. TechRaptor has an article here. Cyberpunk 2077 DLC reveal has been delayed until post-release. Which, okay, makes a good choice there. Cagliostra? there's a Ghibli anime called Castle of Cagliostro, but I don't know if there was ever a character in that called Cagliostro. Maybe that's exactly who this is. Cagliostro. How do you see the backs of the cards better? That's one of the things about Shadowverse, though, that kind of is infuriating, is that there's all these characters and skins and things, but it seems like half of them are only available to the Japanese audience and never come global, or they were only available for such a brief time that me being so late to the game, it doesn't really let me have a lot of these things, which would be more interesting if you could have them.
Nice job, chickadee.
Interesting. She said chickadee. The only other girl that said that was the cat girl, and that felt like that was potentially a localization mistranslation. Like darling would make more sense, but also the word darling, as it is typically translated from English to Japanese, is rarely spoken in public. Moving on, we have a Gamma Sutra article. Remnant from the Ashes tops 1.7 million base game sales in just over a year. Okay, good for it. Let's see, is there something here? I actually expanded my, apparently not. I expanded my firewall to just block cookies too, which probably means they're blocking super cookies, or trying their best to block super cookies, because honestly there's no reason why a cookie should leave a individual computer or device at all. It should always stay there, stay on device, and then the information on the cookie might at some point be used or sent back up to the cloud, but not the actual entirety of the cookie. Not anything that would be recognizable as a cookie by a firewall, at least. We seem to have a poop theme after Thanksgiving here. We have Dawn Flatus Poop Hunter on Steam, which we don't consistently have a bunch of poop games. So it's weird to see two. Like, we probably have seen maybe one or two other games like this up until this point this year. Anyways, it's another $1.99 where they literally sell you virtual poop. Let's see.
Sugar's the best cure for the blues, you know.
The real battle begins.
I believe the sweet shall inherit the earth. Now, don't push.
Let's see. What can we do? Might as well kill that. Tech Raptor has an article here. A Saudi Arabian crown prince is going to buy a controlling stake in SNK, which is weird, certainly, but like inherently the idea that someone is so rich that they can just flippantly buy a controlling stake in a company is bad, in my opinion. Also, that there are kings and princes, and that there are, through this false narrative of royalty, a way in which people can can stay and become super rich is bad. But on the other hand, like, nothing's going on with SNK, so maybe he's just a huge fan of it. But then you come into the problem of, like, can you do business with
I can still
a
fight.
Middle Eastern company, or particularly a Middle Eastern prince, or are you literally just accepting what very possibly is blood money, and accepting tyrannical rule and supporting tyrannical rule? At a certain point, I think the truth is any money in the hands of any prince or king is coming out of the pockets of probably the poorest, if not all the citizens of that country. And it's not like Saudi Arabia is overflowing with wealth to the point where it's a paradise.
I soar the skies in the name of justice.
Then you also have the weirdness of SNK games in general just probably not even being allowed to be played in most Middle Eastern countries, or some Middle Eastern countries. Let's see. If we look here, SNK right now which stands for Shin Neon Kikaku, according to, or at least originally was called that, is a Japanese Osaka-based fighting company. So let's see, they went bankrupt in 2001, 2003, and now are part of a brand reorganization. So made a bunch of Neo Geo games.
Punishment. Repent.
Trying to find a list of games to even think about SNK, because a lot of their stuff is just not even
Shadows.
Kinda haunted.
really worth mentioning. Like, very generic names, things you would see maybe in an arcade, but wouldn't particularly want to play by name. Which, at a certain level, that is the arcade experience. In a nutshell, is that there's 2 or 3 games at the front of an arcade they catch people's attention and people want to play, but there's a significant collection of arcade games that were never popular, and they were just filler, and they took up a lot of space. Like, here's the Wikipedia article. If we could, maybe we could fix this a little bit better. Let's see, let's just go backwards from the oldest, most recent games to the least recent games. Let's see, Samurai Showdown, King of Fighters.
Taste best when you're hungry.
Let's see, we're gonna hit this,
Eating makes me hungry. My tummy's
hit
rumbling.
that,
Can I haunt you too?
hit that. I'm gonna lose anyways. So we got like King of Fighters, Samurai Showdown, King of Fighters, Metal Slug, King of Fighters, Samurai Showdown. Seems like there's a decent number of publishings. This one in this list, but none of them. Yeah, 2000 they were trying really hard. Sonic the Hedgehog Pocket Adventure, making Neo Geo Pocket games in 2000. So you have like a Crown Prince that's going to have the King of Fighters series and the Metal Slug series, and pretty much it. Yeah. some puzzle games. Idol Mahjong Final Romance 2 from 1995. This definitely feels like him owning a controlling share in SNK is either a vanity project or a way of potentially shifting money or shifting power one way or the other. And in general, I just don't think I can agree with the concept of any non-Japanese company or entity having control or ownership of Japanese companies, because frankly it's the Japanese companies and the Japanese people in those Japanese companies that have led them to whatever level of success that they have reached, whether that is, and usually that's a high level of success. It would be a lot easier and smarter, well, maybe not easier, maybe not smarter even, but it would have been a lot kinder for the Crown Prince to have taken whatever money he was going to spend there and fund like programming classes and education classes and made his own citizens capable of making video games, and then he could have funded the development of businesses inside of his own country, which at the very least then that would be slightly helpful. And then you get down to an argument about is the people's money, which I'm argue Prince's money is really the people's money, best suited or being best used even in that element, you know, yeah, or that theoretical endeavor. Next we have a Gematsu article. Zero Gunner 2 is coming to PC on December 21st, which, okay. Looks like a shoot 'em up game. I have no love for shoot 'em up games. Gematsu has an article here. Shin Megami Tensei Online Live 2021 Onogaku no Kotawari concert set for March 20th, 2021. So Shin Megami Tensei is the Persona series and some other games. So I wouldn't be surprised if there is something that's going to be announced. That's the next game in that potential series. TechRaptor has an article here. Nintendo Switch production expands with a Malaysia operations. I haven't seen any Switches with green controls either, so like that might be a new model. There was a Switch on sale for like $300, but I can justify that price. You probably are on a point where we are going to start seeing more and more
Born to be fabulous. Things I do for fashion.
Yeah, we probably are going to start to see more and more developments outside of China and potentially even India and into smaller Asian countries, and then possibly more diverse around a bunch of poor countries all around the world. But yeah, even the greediest of companies these days has started to realize that it's not in their best interest to kowtow to the Chinese imperialism through economics concept.
Stop! Wind, grant them courage.
Tech Raptor has an article here, Made Obscure review,
Some heavy scriptures.
which this is a horror game that I probably saw and then kind of forgot about it. They gave it a 7.5. It's an adaptation. Let me say that again. See if I can pronounce it right this time. Of Welsh folklore, and brings in its own voice to a survival horror genre. Does once it gets over stage fright. Pros are moody gothic and atmosphere, creative sound-based challenges, solid puzzles and stealth gameplay. Cons are its slow, boring first half, underwhelming enemy designs, and predictable central plot. Which, okay. For a horror game,
Work starts at sunset.
like one... see, like for a horror game, like one 7.5 game review is probably enough to say they probably should make it to the wish list, because I almost grade on a scale there and give more of a consideration to horror games, because they're all kind of bad. So an average horror game compared to an average regular game is way worse. Therefore, something reviewed as an average game that's a horror game should be considered more. Okay.
The rage if wanna join us. And that can work to do.
Next story, Tech Raptor has an article here. Updated Nicholas DMCA's Cave Story Engine 2 fan project. Okay. Let's see.
Music to your ears,
The DMCA is only for Cave Story Engine 2. Furthermore, it says Nicholas owns the Cave Story IP, so the DMCA takedown notice is legitimate. So yeah, here we have another DMCA. I'm a little surprised that we haven't seen more DMCAs. I don't care enough about the Cave Story. I don't think I was ever going to cover it anyways. But they're also DMCAing a fan project, which you'd have to do at least some investigation there to see if that means that the fan project was using a bunch of assets, or if they were if they were being fairly legitimate as a fan project. I could certainly also see why a game developer would not want somebody to potentially make an engine that can make a whole bunch of games look exactly like your game. And Cave Story looked like an RPG Maker game already anyways. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Monolith, which seems to be a stand in one place and shoot and swing and fight things game, and it doesn't look terrible. You have like a shield. You seem to launch a kind of slash attack or a chain attack, and so you have like multiple weapons. It seems it's early access. It's $4.99, which is a little cheap for a VR game, but doesn't look terrible. I'm gonna put it on the fall list. I don't know why.
my second. I will rise again.
And I'm zoning out, certainly. Here we have a game on Steam called Hollow Destiny, which looks like a platformer runner. Uninteresting, $1.79. I imagine we won't have much to talk about for the rest of the year. Here we have a game on Steam called Letter Vetter, which looks like it's probably a low effort kind of asset flippy game. they're saying it's hand drawn, but like this is not hand drawn by any means. That's an inaccurate tag. Seems like the entire game is reading letters. $7.19, English full audio. Okay. For damage to all allies and enemies. Hmm.
You're mean. You're too strong.
Hmm. Think I probably would have lost there anyways. Oh, it's just so incredibly difficult to get a freaking victory between Shadowcraft and Havencraft. Maybe I should go back to the basic card designs. Here we have a game on Steam called The Monster of Memory Destiny, which is a visual novel dating sim of the male-on-male persuasion by the looks of it. You don't see a lot of these, and typically you don't see two characters that look relatively similar. They're just like the same hair color. This guy is supposed to be a bit more muscly and more of a bad boy with a tattoo, which is a big no-no in Japanese society. This guy's supposed to be more of a wimp and smaller, but $18.99, Chinese full audio, so it's probably is a Chinese visual novel. By Chinese scale, it doesn't look terrible either. Now the Chinese don't look too kind on, last I heard, like homosexuality either, so there's definitely a reason why we don't see too much of that. Here we have a game called Killimole, which is a top-down twin-stick shooter low-effort game by the graphics for 89 cents. Yeah, I definitely knew I was opening some garbage today when looking at games to talk about. Here we have a game called From the Shadows, which is a puzzle platformer from the looks of it. We've seen a couple of games like this where there's a character that produces light and maybe a character that doesn't produce light. Does seem like it has some decent animation to it, but it also seems like the game might very well not have that much gameplay in it. But so far it's positive. It's free to play. It's English. It's a student project because it does kind of feel like something somebody's proud of. But yeah, since it's a free game, I'd say go check it out, but it's definitely hard to justify covering a game that's free. Next we have a game on Steam called Paper Tales Catch-Up Games, which looks like a cell phone game of some sort. It's being tagged as a card game and a massive multiplayer game, online player versus player. Dynamic card game suitable for mobile. Build a comprehensive strategy and adapt the shapes of your realm according to the opportunities and restrictions. You will make history. Yep, that sounds like a whole bunch of gibberish. It's English, French, and German. I don't know if that's like some weird German game or weird French game or just a weird game in general. Yep. That is something to complain about, certainly, is that we do have a case where the weirdness of Japan got marketed and turned into Japan cool concept. Japanese stuff, anime is cool. But the weirdness of a lot of other countries really never went anywhere. Uh, like there's plenty of Swedish and like Middle European, Eastern European weird things that could have given us a little bit more than just the occasional Heidi or but yeah, it just didn't happen. It hasn't happened yet. Maybe it will at some point. Although, who knows?
Some heavy scriptures.
I think now everybody is just going to be enthralled with their own thing, and there won't be anything major fads anymore, which is probably a good thing. Like nobody can catch everybody's attention. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Warp Drive. Man, it feels like I'm just rambling sometimes when I talk. Like, here we have some hover cars. Okay, $9.79. Looks like it might be a decent concept of a racing game. It might get a little crazy, might get a little bit too neon pukish, but I'll put it on the fall list and we'll see. See, I'm averaging about 5% frame drops right now. And, well, closer to 6%. So, maybe that means I just need to lower the bandwidth on my quality of service. It did seem like somebody was trying to brute force my computer, so maybe somebody is like connecting to my server a lot and war driving and banging on the doors, and I've just not been paying enough attention to see that. That is kind of the problem though, is that it happens to a lot of computers all the time, and the computers are very, very bad about being consistent of warning you if someone is trying to hack into your computer. In fact, they typically are, if you can detect it, they'll try and stop it, but if they can't detect it, then they won't be able to say anything, but they won't usually warn you at all. Next we have a game on Steam here called The Unexpected Quest, which looks like a resource management type game. Maybe a little bit closer to a Dungeon Keeper game. I do like Dungeon Keeper games, but the part about the Dungeon Keeper games I like are the Dungeon Keeper part. $10.39, English, German, Chinese, and Russian. I'm gonna put this on the fall list, I think, because there might be something here. Maybe I'm also just getting really, really desperate. What does this do? Four, two.
You were done for. Ow! Back
Yes.
straight, eye
And,
forward.
I think I'm gonna win, unless something horrible happens. See, next we have a game called Royal Roads, which this does look like just a standard resource management game. It's $8.99, that's too expensive. English, French, German, and Russian. No, not interested in that at all. Next we have Strike 3 Solitaire, which is just a solitaire game for $2.99. English, French, German, and Russian again. you may be seeing a theme here. I suspect that there is a definite case that a lot of people intentionally did not put any games out or weren't going to release any games around American Thanksgiving, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and the autumn sale. Like, that's just the wrong time
Freed from suffering.
to announce a new game. Well, I won that, but I didn't really win it because of anything I did. Gematsu has an article here. A 6-part Bit Trip series is coming to Switch on December 25th, which I suppose these might be older Bit Trip games being ported over and not 6 new games. Bit Trip is an interesting name, but the graphics are the exact opposite of interesting.
Is fighting and despair all you know?
超天才の戦略お見せしますよ。
Next, we have a game on Steam here called Social Distancing, which is just a low-effort asset flip game based on social distancing. $2.99. If this was free and it claimed to be educational, I might give it a chance, but no. It's really just a troll game. Next, we have a game on Steam called Penny RPG Shadows of the Lost and Blood City Tale, which is 3 titles, not 1. And it looks like it's mostly black and white garbage RPG game. Early access coming soon. It's not even out yet. Okay, this.
I soar the skies in the name of justice.
And see, I can see the beginning of the end, so we may end up having to find something to talk about if we're even going to go that long. Otherwise, I'm just going to end early and take a nap.
Justice does not hide in the shadows.
Next, we have a game on Steam here called The Wizard Game, which is obviously a low-effort garbage game. It's $2.99 English, bunch of 4 achievements. Alright. This. Gematsu has an article, Winning Post 9 2021 Japan Cup Race Simulation Gameplay. This is one of these horse racing games that never comes to the West. It is worth mentioning that I heard this, and I'm not sure we're going to actually have the sales numbers to show it, but in this last week, the Switch apparently outsold the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox Series X and Series S by like 5 times. That's what I had heard. Which, yeah, that's believable. Microsoft consoles are never sold in Japan, and the Sony consoles are not selling in Japan at the moment. And some of that almost certainly has to do with scarcity and pandemics, but some of it I think just also has to do with a lack of a Japanese launch lineup, which I'm not sure what the PlayStation 4 launch lineup really looks like at all. We could take a look. Here we have a game called Last Land on Steam, which looks like a first-person shooter. It looks somewhat visually polished, so there might actually be a game here. Let's see, $6.99 English Bologna. Someone was claiming that like the really expensive latest video card was a launch on paper only because it's just not available for anywhere. Which that argument probably does hold some weight.
Today we'll lift some heavy scriptures.
So I'm wondering if you could potentially make the exact same argument with the PlayStation 4 and or the PlayStation, the Xbox Series S and Series X. I'm gonna put Last Land on the fall list. Let's see. PS4 launch line up.
Feel me grasp the sheer boom of infinity.
Nope, not PS4. That would be the last generation. PlayStation 5 launch lineup.
That concludes today's sermon.
Well, that is a odd comparison. Let's see. Let's keep playing.
Salvation lies in reason's judgment. You're done for. Wisdom is divinity. Be just. Whoa, bud! Cut the rough stuff.
Clean your wings with prayer.
Okay, so here's an article I looked up. All PlayStation 5 launch games. So you have Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which isn't going to be amazingly interesting to the Japanese audience. Astro's Playroom, which is a demo. Borderlands 3, not going to be interesting. Bugsnax might catch some people in Japan, but not that many. Call of Duty, no Japanese interest. Dead by Daylight, old game, not interesting anywhere. Demon Souls, yes, will catch some people, but it's an old game, and I don't even know if this is a remake worth even mentioning. Devil May Cry 5, yes, but old game also. Dirt 5, no. Fortnite, no. Godfire, Godfall, no, probably. Gonya Fighter, never heard of it. King Oddball, no. Maneater, no. That's the one where you play as a shark. I didn't know that was out, actually. Spider-Man, alright, it's going to have decent sales anywhere, but no special appeal to the Japanese audience. Mortal Kombat 11, no. NBA 2K, no. No Man's Sky, Observer, and Overcooked, all no. The Pathless, maybe, I can't remember what that game is. Planet Coaster, no. Poker Club, no. Sackboy, no. Warhammer, no. Watch Dogs, no. And WRC 9, don't know what it is at all. So there is literally just no games. There's no there's nothing close to a JRPG. Gonya Fighter apparently is this game. There's it's just like no interest at all. And see, what's really crazy is not only that did they let the California office of Sony Interactive, Pathless is this one, and it might catch a few people's attention. But the idea that the California offices would completely, like, not even think about the Japanese audience and almost certainly intentionally ignore and snub the Japanese audience. I mean, that's just bad business in general. It's not wise. And if they were going to do something like that, at the very least, they could do it for cynical reasons. they could say, hey, instead of us having a bunch of games that appeal to the Japanese, let's instead try to sell a bunch of games to the Chinese so we can make more money that way. And even at that, if you were targeting China and pretty much ignoring Japan, you still would have some kind of Asian RPG game or something that would have some appeal in Japan. But no, they're just so self-absorbed. And that's probably all California people in a nutshell, is just really self-absorbed people who think they're geniuses, but in actuality are either scammers or just incompetent fools. Moving on, we have a Gematsu article. The Sakura Kakame Hanasaka Otome Taichi launches December 15th in Japan. This is some kind of smartphone game. This is the anime girls in the mechanical armor outfit, which you don't see a lot of that, in all fairness. Like, you usually see them in straight up mechs or robots, and so this is a kind of mix between the idea of having mechs and robots and the idea of having cute anime girls and actually being able to see them, which is a concept that took a lot longer to come about than you would have thought it would have, in the form of, I would say, that the naval game, that with the flying cat girl characters. What is that one called? If I can remember. I don't think I can remember the name of it. But that anime is certainly going strong, and the spin-off games are still going fairly strong. Which you have anime girls with little jets on their feet flying around, and they're cat girls. And they're always in dresses and skirts, as is typical for Japanese dress, so you're always potentially seeing their underwear, which is what led it to its popularity, almost certainly. That is certainly a Japanese thing as far as I get it. Like, I don't think I ever once thought that I wanted to see anyone else's underwear of any gender ever. Like, and particularly like younger people, to the point where I'd say I wouldn't want to see a college kid's underwear, frankly.
A glimpse into the future is only the beginning.
Perhaps that's just because I'm more oversexed than more, so I definitely just jump to straight up wanting to see people naked. And so far that desire has yet to pass.
This'll take more than a service friends.
Moving on, here we have a game on Steam called Dome Discover, and this is a weird looking, kind of empty JRPG. You have this one main character drawn in almost like a 90s anime style, and then it feels like this might be like a Chinese company trying to make an RPG, but it's just so empty. It's early access, it's free, it's English, Spanish, Latin America. Oh, interesting. So it's a Japanese RPG not being made by any Asian company at all. Or at least it's being tagged as a JRPG. And it definitely looks like that. I could see the idea here of going with that, like, male protagonist hero with more of a Spanish flair to him, almost like a bullfighter in his attacks, which you could take the movement of a bullfighter and eliminate the cruelty of fighting a bull and probably catch a few people's attention.
A bear a day keeps the doctor away.
Next, we have a game on Steam called Black Blade, which looks like a platformer. Unfortunately, it kind of looks like it's just a platformer. I'm not really seeing any enemies or anything. Or seems like you have like a double jump and you're jumping around the forest. That seems like that's it. It definitely feels like it's just a platforming game and nothing else. $5.99 English Chinese. Yep. Surprise, surprise to no one. Man, it kind of sucks. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday has slowly boiled down to just, boy, these Japanese developers are bad at making games, as a conversation over and over again. Which at a certain point, I mean, if I get tired of it, I guess I just then stop including Chinese games or anything that looks like a Chinese game in the first place. And I just stop opening the links to those games. That would significantly reduce the number of games we talk about, but it would also leave me ignorant of the current state of what's being released for sale. I don't know if I really want to embrace that. If I'm going to start curating what I'm talking about, and then you just open the door to curating and curating and curating some more until you're literally only talking about 1 or 2 games a month, and you're back to being the exact same kind of video game critic / news reporter as everybody else is, where they only talk about the biggest things that are already being talked about by other people, and perhaps the occasional hidden gem they might randomly get shown, or they might be actually being paid to talk about. Suppose inherently, if my YouTube channel ever did become super popular, there might be a lot of people that would feel the need to suggest me checking out games, and that might be an interesting thing that I'd probably need an editor to work around that concept, but let's see.
I soar the skies in the name of justice.
But yeah, if I could potentially start to see older games, although honestly I would rather people ask me about to look at older games or talk about older games, because I imagine there's a bunch of people that would just mention a bunch of games that I've either mentioned and rejected or I've already played, and it doesn't feel like there is a lot of hidden gems. Okay. This. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Kaku Ancient Seal, which looks like it might be a decent RPG, and it kind of feels like you're playing as cavemen. It kind of looks like the Croods, which I was surprised to see that they're actually making a new Croods movie. So kind of alien-ish caveman characters, which shows a level of polish and a level of attempt. And in a weird way, this early access game actually looks like a game that should be in early access. It's English and Chinese. It's free at the moment as an alpha. I'm going to put it on the fall list and see if it can come out of becoming an alpha or being an alpha. Half of the number of things destroyed, which should be like 1.
Every shot is a miracle.
Nope. ScumVM has an article here. The Red Comrades game series goes supported, which, okay. Red Comrades is a 2D adventure game played in a third-person perspective. The game's protagonist is...
Sticking my head in the clouds.
Yeah, I'm not sure this is English supported. Like, this was a Google Summer of Code student, which made these. But yeah, you can see that the title is in Russian too, so it'd be interesting to play a Russian point-and-click adventure game, because that is something different. Let's do this. And then let's do this. And then what do we want to do? Evolve? Nope.
What's for Din?
Yeah, I think suffering. I didn't even eat that much for Thanksgiving. Like, I ate one big plateful, and then I thought to myself, yeah, I'm not even gonna have dessert. I'm gonna space this out. I'm a little too old these days to just scarf it all down in one sitting. And then I think I slept a little, and then pretty much that was it. And yet that still seems to have put me in kind of a weird mental mood. I think probably I just haven't slept enough. It was fairly salty. I imagine Thanksgiving's meals are always salty, so I definitely feel a little dehydrated also. I did finally get around to unplugging the battery backup from my old server and plugging it into the new server, so I made some progress there. I also had a couple of hard drives enclosures sitting around, and the problem is that I have two hard drive enclosures, and one is 120 gigs and the other is 320 gigs, so it's like completely useless, tiny amounts of space for a huge amount of storage. No, tiny amount of storage for a huge amount of actual physical space that it takes up. So I need to optimize that. Need to give or throw the hard drives away, or at the very least plug them in and have them do something useful. And I have a third external hard drive adapter too, then that too should just be gotten rid of. These hard drives that are in them are also incredibly old hard drives, which inarguably I have way too many hard drives than I ever need for the rest of my life. Just depends on how much storage I think I really need and how many backups I think I could possibly make. Alright. We can see we're not making progress very fast. If anything, I should probably play the single player campaign. Like, I haven't even seen the storyline of the single player campaign for this new chapter, and I just don't even care. Here we have a game on Steam called Tetragen Dragons, which looks like it's mix of Tetris and some other gameplay mechanics, but really doesn't look like a fully thought out game in totality. $7.99. They're comparing it to Binding of Isaac and Spelunky. English only. Nothing there. Makes me want to put that on the following list. Like, I couldn't even really do a fall list cleanup right now. I just need to play more games, upload more games, schedule more games, fix my sleep schedule, and move on. Here we have a game on Steam called Castle of the Land, which looks like MS Paint level graphics. $1.99 English, nothing there. Here we have a game called Seasons of the Samurai, which seems to be maybe a hex tile based platforming game. Let's see, puzzles. Solve increasingly challenging puzzles by controlling the season and the day of time on each level. I don't know how that affects anything. Like the video did not show me for a second like what changes. Also, the world just shifts, and he walks forward if he has a straight path to walk forward onto.
Together we are whole.
Yeah, Season of the Samurai is $9.99. Bunch of languages supported. Nah.
This here's all mine.
Let's see. Next we have at least one Moe looking game, Sakura Dimensions. Visual novel. Moe anime girls. And it says it's a dating sim, so I don't know why there's an RPG element being shown here. $4.79 English only, which probably means it's not that good. And yeah, I think at a certain point we've got to account for some quality and not potentially put every visual novel on the fault list just because.
Wait, not yet!
Alright. Next we have a game on Steam here called Imagine Lifetimes, which seems to be kind of a choose. It shows you some pictures that somebody made, and then you just click on things and potentially get an outcome. So it's like a simulation point and click, not really point and click game. It's already mixed reviewed. $7.99 is way too expensive. English and Dutch. And yeah, if this is what Dutch games are, well, that's not good enough in the game department. Nor is it particularly that weird. Okay.
Come out wherever you are.
Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Narrow Escape, which looks like a running through a hotel or asset flip game like so many others we've seen. Early access, $8.49, bunch of languages. TechRaptor has an article here. The Legend of Bob-omb free DLC is releasing next year. Not too many people actually decided to play the Legend of Bob-omb. Bumbo. It's not Bob-omb, it's Bumbo. But I'd play it. Certainly, there's some Binding of Isaac DLC certainly I haven't played, and it'd be hard to justify trying to play that, really. But frankly, I should just do whatever I want to do. So if I want to play Legend of Bumbo, I should play Legend of Bumbo. I should also figure out the name of the thing I'm talking about.
Coming for detestable. Wanna join us?
Sand in my eyes.
See, next we have a game on Steam called Spinny's Journey, which looks like it's a terrible physics game where you're trying to keep a spinning stick or something moving around some terrible assets. $14.99, ridiculous price. Bunch of languages. Claims to support them all in full audio. Next, we have a game on Steam called Alien Dual Elements, which looks like a player versus player garbage game. $3.99 English only. The concept of potentially fighting with fire, air, and water as elements, which is I assume what that is, might make some sense, but I don't think it's really gonna work. It's actually Fire, Frost, and Arcane. I feel like there has been a major gap in the market as far as any video game where you play as an elemental mage of any sort.
This weapon was forged.
There definitely have been some RPGs where you can play as an elemental mage, or you can have an elemental mage in your party, but the idea of having something like Trine where you have to solve puzzles with elemental powers, I don't think that's been really successfully done. Reanimate to 5.
Come, Mrs. Mittens. We have work to do.
Right.
On your train.
And let's go ahead and take this guy out.
Arise, the cats demand it. Well,
Another time then.
well done.
You have a game on Steam called The Wizard Wiz Harder Edition, which they're saying it's an RPG game. I don't recall a game called The Wizard coming out. And it doesn't look like it much. It's early access, $16.14. Has this developer really made a game called The Wizard? Nope. And he also has a game here called Pepper Prince. And that seems to be it. Although in all fairness, Pepper Prince is an incredibly old looking game, and The Wizard is only a slightly old looking game, so he is getting better as a developer. The company is getting better as a developer. Next, we have a game on Steam called Awaken Dark Space,
To understand you.
which, no. Don't see anything there.
Flare, be my sword.
I'll save you all!
Ow! You're mean! You're mean!
Wind, grant them courage.
Let's talk about that article later. I think we already mentioned this, but Remnant from the Ashes sales top 2.5 million. Which I don't even know what the game is. Is this the one that had the trailer where you're fighting, or is this the one that's based on Dungeons and Dragons? And they have like mind flayers. This looks cool. This looks like a cool. Is this the one where you're? Yeah, I think this is that one. I need to make sure Remnant from the Ashes is on my Steam wish list. It is. Alright. Well, I kind of feel like I would have appreciated playing that. 14 defense or less before defensive storage, which requires around. I've got to do this, don't I?
I shall give birth to a new world. Lots of bones, but make it fashion.
I'm gonna fail. So I'm not moving fast enough.
Honey, those bones with that flesh.
That's a funny
Forces of
sentence.
darkness, bow before my tempest.
Here we have a game called Hive Swap Act 2. It's tagged as a visual novel game. So the question is, let's look at Hive Swap Act 1 and see how well received that was, because I feel like this was on my wish list. Why did I say no to a point-and-click adventure game that is overwhelmingly positive? I don't know. I think the Act 1 was the problem, because it was in 2017, so I probably took it off because
You're too strong.
of that fact alone. It's just taking them forever to make a game series. And yeah, that just does not work, really. To take 3 years to release Act 2 of a game. You shouldn't have called it Act 2. You should have given it discrete titles. But, yeah, alright. I'll put the Act 2 on the follow list. I'll put Act 1 on the wish list. And I'll reconsider everything. Let's see. We already talked about the Steam Awards. Superliminal. Haiti. I did buy Haiti. So that'll be an interesting attempt to see if I can play that. PC Building Simulator was one I was going to take off. Did I get Duke Nukem World 20th Anniversary World Tour? Yes, I did. I didn't get Shantae and the Seven Sirens. That was selling for $20.99. Too expensive. And sure, I can e-bag here and say people could gift me games, but yeah. That'd be nice, but I don't expect it. I didn't get any of the Quantic Dream games either. So, like the last 4 of those tabs that I just had open weren't even games that had come out. The Fall VR Humble Bundle ends in 13 hours. And the Sweet Farm Fall Games Bundle from Humble Bundle ends in 4 days. So I don't think there's a chance of anything else happening. Gamma Sutra has a blog here, The Anatomy of a Steam Sale, which is just somebody talking about some game that, or some game company that we've never heard of. Let's see. Sales increased by 48 times compared to an average week. So sales certainly do seem like they help. And I don't know what else you really say there. Of course, sales are going to bring more eyes to the smaller and mid-tier games. Then we have another blog here, The Impact of Video Game Criticism. Let's see, measuring design, how critic helps. A video game is not special. That's like everybody's special in the sense that nobody's special. So, I mean, you get into a looping thought pattern there. The goal of criticism. See, the thing is, though, a video game critic would almost certainly never read an article like this. This is an article without a audience at all. Like, video game critics don't want to be influenced or shouldn't be influenced by other video game critics or game publishers or game developers or frankly anyone else at all. Like, the thing that makes you a good critic, if you are going to be a good critic, is going to be your own personal opinions and your own personality. What makes you unique. And while you might listen to other people's reviews, the last thing you should do is listen to criticism about your criticism, which inherently, even if this is positive critique, it is just criticism about video game critics. And there are audiences out there, certainly for people like Jim Sterling, who has devolved into basically just making fun of the same video game companies over and over again, and or talking about SJW identity politics over and over again. And Kotaku, there's some audience there, and I don't think those type of people could take critique ever anyways, but even if they were to get critique on their criticism, I don't think that it improves their opinions any, because their opinions are frankly either evaporated or non-existent in the first place. And so they obviously had nothing of interest to say or no thoughts going through their head in the first place, and that's how a lot of video game journalists became video game journalists, or became mainstream video game journalists, is because they couldn't be actual journalists or actual creators that write like fiction or anything like that. Alright, moving on, because now I'm just pooping on mainstream video game journalism a little bit, but it's true. I'm going to go through my Twitter feed. Oh, I should talk about the G4 Gravython. I watched it. I saw the production company that made the reunion, I watched the reunion show, which is part of the Gravython, which is this marathon that's being hosted by a bunch of Twitch streamers. The reunion gave zero indication whatsoever about if any of the old people are coming back. But I would say there is probably a decent chance that none of them are coming back, because Adam Sessler, Morgan Webb, all of them just look too old. That there's no reason for them to come back. They should, like, Adam Sessler and Morgan Webb are probably the only people that actually would be able to review video games in general. And unless you're going to just have Kevin Pereira and all the other hosts become either the occasional on-screen talent and a lot of the background concept writers, which you could probably get other concept writers cheaper. I just don't think any reason why any of them would want to come back, other than the fact that they probably don't have any better options for employment at the point. Adam Sessler is officially not part of the place he was working. Morgan Webb, as far as I can tell, still is in charge of still working at the video game company she was working on at. So there'd definitely be a conflict of interest, at least for Morgan Webb. There's the production company that is potentially actually going to relaunch G4 has some productions behind their belt. They're not a fly-by-night thing, but it doesn't inherently tell me that this isn't just going to be a Geek and Sundry style bait and switch. Remember also that the College Humor website went out of business, and then at some point came back, because they're still putting up YouTube videos. I don't know how. They must have gotten some funding, but they had kind of fired everybody and shuttered the whole project. And so I wouldn't be surprised if you tried to do something like that, where they brought back G4, but then they tried to monetize it through a heavy paywall, in the sense that G4 barely puts out like a weekly podcast for free, and then the vast majority of the content is behind the paywall, kind of like Giant Bomb, which, yeah, that also inherently kind of ruined Giant Bomb, in the sense that it became more repetitive and pointless if you're not paying for the premium content. So, yeah. I went through my Twitter feed, not much has happened. We have a game called Legend Bowl, which this looks like what you would expect to see if you were going to have a remake of like NES football. Like, you take the general concept, you get a little pixely, but then you zoom in or you zoom out, you make it look actually a lot better than it actually did. You throw in a lot more colors. This is actually very interesting to my eye. $16.99. Interesting? No, but I'm going to put it on the follow list anyways. As someone who has only liked the NES football and none of the other football games, probably because it's not really a football game, it still interests me. Here we have Roscommon Landing, which is some kind of physics lander style game. It's 59 cents, English and Russian. Maybe a Russian troll game, maybe not. Yep. Well, that's gonna be it for this stream. We didn't even make it 2 hours, but I'm fine with that. And overall, we're at 5% frame drops. So, and we didn't have any major delays in the game. So, whatever I have done, or whatever the other network people have done, my ISP has potentially done, has fixed some of the internet. Now, maybe it is just a case that there are a bunch of people that are just not streaming at the moment, but because they're, I don't know, shopping or watching TV. Anyways, that's going to be it for the stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.